Welcome. You're listening to This Leader, the podcast. If you lead people and are seeking the transformational, high-impact secrets that will lead to greater joy and fulfillment in your work, will optimize your team performance, and will help you create a happy, highly productive workplace, then you are this leader and you're in the right place. I'm your host, Claire Laughlin, and each week my guests and I will explore the mindsets, techniques, and actionable strategies that will help you build the career, team, and organization of your dreams. Because I believe no one should have to suffer in a dysfunctional workplace. Let's get started. Have you ever been in one of those situations with a colleague or manager where you felt absolutely stuck and you couldn't see your way to a solution? Like you can't talk to the person, you can't see eye to eye, and you've tried everything, but the challenge just persists. I mean, I know I have. And sometimes I've found ways to work around it, like focusing on what I can learn from the situation, or maybe limiting my exposure to the person if I can. What if you can't get away? What if you have to work with someone day in and day out, and there's something deeply dysfunctional about the relationship? That can just ruin your entire experience of work. Well, my guest today has spent her career diving headfirst into exactly these situations, not avoiding them, but transforming them. Today, I'm talking with Theresa Phillips. She's a colleague and friend who has literally made a career out of what most of us try to avoid. Theresa has conducted over 700 workplace investigations. She's built investigation programs for healthcare giants like Kaiser Permanente and tech pioneers like Symantec and HP. And she holds both executive HR credentials and a private investigator license. For 25 years, she's been healing organizational dysfunction by teaching leaders to manage performance issues skillfully and mediating conflicts with an open heart and laying foundations for higher trust. But here's what makes Theresa so special. She brings an incredible amount of authenticity and caring and heart to the hardest and most challenging situations imaginable. And as she moves into retirement, I wanted to capture her wisdom about how the worst workplace conflicts often become our greatest opportunities for growth. So let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Theresa Phillips. Hello, Theresa. So glad you're here.
Thank you, Claire. I always enjoy spending time with you. So thank you for the invitation to join your podcast.
Absolutely. So, Theresa, we have been working together for several years, and it's been so wonderful to partner with you on wonderful projects and just get to know you better. And a couple weeks ago, you gave me the news that you will be retiring. But what I'm so excited about is that you are retiring toward something amazing. You're moving toward more family time, more adventure, more travel, just good stuff for you. And I love that.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you, Claire.
I really wanted to seize this opportunity to bring you on and talk about lessons that you've learned in this amazing career that you've had. I mean, when I think about some of the highlights of your career, you've been in some amazing places. You go right to the heart of the matter. I feel like, we've already done an intro of some of the highlights of your bio, but ultimately, this place where you work around performance issues, like coaching with managers, performance issues. And then when those escalate into investigations and mediation between folks and repairing trust, it's like this fulcrum of human experience that you've spent your life working in is just so rich. And I think about how much we can learn from those moments of setback and suffering and struggle. And that's what I want to talk about today. So how did you find yourself in this particular place, Theresa? How did you land there?
It was an interesting journey, Claire, for sure. I started off certainly in human resources. That's where my formal education is in human resources. Started in employee relations, which is performance issues, which is coaching of managers, which is helping employees if they need accommodations. And investigations was a huge piece of this work. And that's how I actually got started into my path of where I'm at today.
Wow. Yeah. So you just sort of followed your interests and your natural strengths and went into, you've done over 700 investigations.
Yes, I have done that many. And I've learned so much over the years. When I first started doing investigations, Claire, I would certainly follow, my intro, my questions, things like that.
Right.
And it wasn't until it morphed and I started listening to what people were saying, not just getting the facts, but who they were. A lot of times in investigations, there is pain, there is trauma, there is fear.
Yes.
They are going through a lot. And I stopped and I started listening and looking at that, the pain in their face, the questions. What's going to happen to me if the person is the complainant? Or what's going to happen to them if the person is the defendant, the person who the allegation is against? And I realized that there's a lot behind them, the fear that they have, the story they want to tell. And I started listening to their story. Certainly, I had to gather the facts, yes, but
Yeah.
I found out about who they are, what they do, how long they've been in that role, those kinds of things. And then from there, I'd ask them what happened. And I really heard. And at the end of the conversation, I would get feedback. Theresa, thank you for listening. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I feel like I've been heard. And from there, Claire, I thought, that is what my role is. People want to be heard. They want an opportunity for someone to listen to them without bias, without making up a decision ahead of time. But do you hear me? Do you see me? Do I matter?
Right. Oh, and I could just totally imagine that right there in the initial interviews that you're doing in an investigation, you are the catalyst for the healing that needs to eventually begin, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it starts in the very first interview I have with the employees. It starts there.
Right. I love the way you said maybe at first, you're focused on your fact finding questions. And as I can imagine you way back in your career, as you're learning to really do this, you're like, okay, what is my role? How do I do this? How do I make sure I get all the information? And somewhere there's this transition point where you start to feel more comfortable in that role and you realize, I'm going to stretch out into this and I'm going to see these people and I'm going to understand what's really going on.
Absolutely. Because sometime it had been a short-term event, that it was a one-time event that something happened that was a misconduct, say. And so that's different from something that's been ongoing for a long time. Maybe it's peer to peer. They're not getting along. Something has happened. Or it's manager to employee. And there's been a history of some tension. There's been a history of any number of things. So each situation is a little bit different. And so I want to hear that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what led to where we are today.
Right.
What happened? And they start to tell, their story.
Yeah.
They start to tell me what happened. And that's where I get.
Yeah. I want to know just a couple of these. What's the range of these situations? Like you just said, okay, misconduct maybe on one end, which might just be like an isolated incident. Is that okay? An isolated incident?
Yes.
Like, give us some examples here. What are we talking about in this over 700 investigations?
Here's one that happened, and it was a Halloween event at work. And so people were in costume. And so one employee said another employee touched them on the chest, and that was inappropriate. And as a matter of fact, it was a female that touched the male on the chest because she just wanted to see and touch the print. And there was some things that she wanted to just get closer. And he filed sexual harassment. And so that's an isolated event. They worked together. And
But there's a story there.
there's a story there. Of course, I investigate, I find out what happened. It didn't rise to the occasion of sexual harassment, certainly, but there were some things that one of the colleague that touched the gentleman in the chest had to learn and understand. He didn't like it. He didn't want it. It was unwelcome. And so he said, I think she's out to get me. And I said, well, tell me why you think that. So we talked through why he thought she was out to get him. She wants to be out of the organization. I've heard things from other people about what she has said. So there was a backstory, Claire, that I had to go back and talk to, the other employee about. I asked the person who raised the complaint, do you have any witnesses? Do you have anyone I can talk to? No, it's
Right.
just, people have dropped comments that she's talking about me. There were no witnesses that I could go back and talk to. Certainly, I gave my findings. I also talked with both employees about what they can do and what they can't do in the workplace. Even a touch on the chat on the T-shirt for Halloween, it was unwelcome,
Right.
And so she said, "I didn't mean it." She got very upset. She started crying, and I said, "This is a learning opportunity." We talked through that. Eventually, they went back to work in the same workplace, in the same organization, and things went fine. But here's a situation where there was a one-off that could have gone very, very differently, and I just needed to hear both sides of the story. And again, he was saying, "She's talking about me. She doesn't want me in the organization." He couldn't give me any witnesses. She denied that she ever said anything about this employee. So that was one situation where that happened. That's just one.
Even this just reminds me of I kind of have this principle I work with, and I know you and I have talked about this, but this principle that I have is always like, I want to help people talk directly to each other about their differences and their disagreements and build some appreciation and understanding early in any team, right? I just feel that that foundation of being able to speak directly to one another about these things. So, for example, that investigation could have been very different. I assume nothing about these specific people, right? But
Right.
from my view as a consultant, I look at that and I do a lot of trust building work and I think, what if those two could have just resolved that?
Yes.
What if the person being touched could have just said, hey, please don't. That makes me uncomfortable. And the other person would have said, oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me. And that could have been it, right? But we don't spend enough time working at that foundation of trust. So these moments escalate and turn into, right? They go, I guess, along this escalation curve from like it's a difference to now it's a serious problem, it's discord, and now it's, a dispute that now needs to be mediated or investigated and sometimes with dire consequences, I assume.
Absolutely, with some time with dire consequences, and as you said, it could have been handled so differently, "Please don't touch my T-shirt, it makes me feel uncomfortable." That could have been the end of it, but it wasn't. It's just employees just sometimes don't talk to each other for whatever reason. Yes,
I know. I come back to like, this is why it's the leader's job to constantly be cultivating trust on the team. And like, that's a hard role. But if we don't do it, what do we end up with often, right? We end up with these kind of situations between people that just simmer under the surface until something erupts.
absolutely. It reminds me of something that happened some time ago when I was asked to come in and do an assessment for an organization. Did an assessment for the organization, and there was one employee's name that came up to the top of being difficult to work with, and people didn't like working with her. Certainly, at the end of the report and assessment, I gave this information to the director. He was not surprised. He said, "Yes, Teresa, we've had constantly have issues with this employee." I said, "Okay." Later on, I was called in for a mediation with this same employee and another employee. And these two employees, Claire, worked in the same organization, maybe 6 or 7 feet away from each other. They did not speak. Everything was over email or chat or something else. And so they were called in for mediation. They were so adversarial to each other. And it's because one person thought, she doesn't like me. The other person thought, she doesn't like me. She makes comments about me. What comments were those that you heard? So we vetted through that. At the end of the mediation time, these two people could not agree on how they could move forward. So what I did with this was one that I learned a lot from this mediation. Typically in the mediation, I can get the two parties to at least work through the areas that they want to have agreement on. Instead of blaming each other about it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. Let's look from an aim frame. What are you aiming to get from this working relationship? Well, I want to be able to talk to this person. I need to be able to work with this person. This particular mediation, these two individuals could not come up with an agreement. So what I did was, let's talk about the values you both have in working for this organization. So they started listing common values. And from there, I said, can you agree? Do you agree on these values? Do you agree on these values? Yes, they did. So I formed an agreement with their values that they both accepted. And so that's how we were able to move forward. I also involved the director, not with the mediation process, but with the values that the two employees agreed to. And I asked the manager, would he be the champion if something goes wrong or they want to check in, they can check in with the director. And that's how that worked. But that was learning experience because actually, Claire, that mediation kind of went sideways. And I said, I have to figure out how to bring this back together. So these two people need to work together and they have to work together. And now they are because they have values that they both have agreed to.
Yeah. Okay. I have so many follow-up questions. I want to know, what did you learn from that? You said it kind of went sideways. I could imagine you being like, okay, now what? And it sounds like you just went like that iceberg kind of metaphor. You just went under the surface and you go like, okay, there's got to be some common ground somewhere. So let me hear first from you. And then I want to ask you a little bit about the manager's responsibility and all that. But let's start there. What did you learn about yourself? Maybe even about deep drivers of motivation and human nature from that situation?
I typically will share in mediation what the other person, say party A, they've written down the things that they want, and I share those with party B so that they know what party B is thinking about. And party B, do you have any accountability or what can you aim to make things different? And I do the same thing with the other party. So what I set up is that both parties will come into the mediation with an aim frame, with thinking about what can I do? What does the other party want? Okay.
Yeah. And what do I want moving forward?
Mhm.
Like, what am I trying to create? Do you find that some people have a really hard time answering that question? I'm just curious.
Not so much. What I do find is that the person who's asking for what they want, they think they've done nothing wrong, but they've done nothing to contribute to this relationship going sideways. It's not me, Theresa. It's the other party. If the other
Right.
party would do A, B, and C, everything would be fine. But Claire, you and I, it takes two. And that's what I find. I find that the other party doesn't feel like they have any accountability or they haven't done anything that would cause an issue. And the other party feels the same way. Talk through that. And so I ask again, what can you do to help bridge this gap, whatever it is? What would you like from the other party to do
Yeah.
to help bridge that gap? So that's what I typically do. In this situation, they couldn't figure it out. So then I went to the values. What do you value then? And that's where there was commonality. I helped to bring that point up to them. And when we met together as the two parties and myself as mediator, that's what we talked about. We talked about the values.
Yeah.
You said that this is a value of yours, that you want to be respected, that you want to be talked to with dignity and respect, that you want to make sure that if there is a disagreement, that you talk to each other about it in a way that is professional, not blaming. You did something wrong. Why didn't you do it this way? But seek to understand. And they both wanted that as a value. Coming to work with the best expectation of your coworker instead of coming to work because she's out to get me or I'm out to get her. So coming with best of intent, assume the best of your coworker. What are the guidelines and operating principles of your department? Do you follow those? If you can't expect someone to follow those if you don't follow them. So let's pull them up. So I pulled them up. Is this what you do? Is this what the department has decided would be a operating guideline or norm? And they both agreed yes. So how are you going to demonstrate that to each other?
Right. Oh, God, that's so good. Because I agree 100%. I think one of the stickiest parts of trust is that in our desire to sort of defend our character or to not experience this cognitive dissonance that happens where we have to admit, okay, I am part of the problem. That is so hard for people. But when we can really see that, we can start looking forward and figuring out, okay, what could I do to make this better? You know, it always blows my mind when somebody is willing to continue to come to work day after day, week after week, month after month, sometimes year after year, and sit 7 feet from a person that they're unwilling to speak to. I always find that just the idea of it all seems so tragic to me. You know, here's a human being sitting next to you that you could be collaborating with, joking around with, sharing an occasional meal with, you know?
Absolutely, Claire. And these two colleagues had worked together for 7 years.
Wow.
7 years it had been like that. And so, of course, one individual said, she's never included for birthdays. Her cubicle's never decorated, but this other individual decorates everybody else's cube except for hers. Well, the colleague said, "You never wanted to have your cube decorated." "Well, you never asked me that I want to decorate it." So it's just back and forth for 7 years.
Carry these hurts around with us, right? Forever. Yeah.
Exactly. And I found out through the directors that, Teresa, I was hoping that if there's someone who could help to mediate, it would be you. So I thought, okay, okay. I wish I'd have known that ahead of time, but it worked out in a way that they were able to have those values that they both shared. And again, while the director was not involved in the mediation itself, the values that were shared was part of a closure meeting. The director will check in with each individual just to make sure how are things going to, as a check-in and that. So he is the champion. I call him the champ. He or she is
Right.
called the champion so that he is there as a resource.
Okay. So now I want to go back to that piece just about the leader's role, right? So listeners to this podcast are leaders or, either already in positions where they are managing and supervising others and leading the way or aspire to that in some way. And so I just think about that particular thing. How did it happen? And you don't have to answer this in specific with this situation, but how does it happen that a manager observes two of their people are not speaking to each other? This has to be observable, right? This has to be something where you're like, isn't that in and of itself a performance problem? Like, how does it go to the place where they sit side by side for long periods of time and they have this tension between them? And why does the manager not address it? Or do they not have the skills? In your opinion, how does it even get there? To me, that just feels like the leader's responsibility to be watching for that and to kind of escalate that as sort of a performance issue to address it long before it would turn into an investigation or a mediation. So, what happens there? What do you think? What can the leaders learn? How do we address this as leaders?
Yeah, this is an excellent question, Claire, because it is the leader's responsibility to address this. In this situation, the leader was fairly new, 2 years, but this situation had been going on for 7 years. And even this newer director knew there were things that were wrong. And yes, it is the leader's responsibility to get in there and say, something is wrong, something is going on. Talking to the individuals individually, together, but talking to the individuals individually. What I'm observing this.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a correct assumption? Tell me about the working relationship between you and your colleague.
Right.
What have you been experiencing? Has there been any issues in the past? Has this been talked about? And in this case, there had been investigations in this department involving that individual. But again, there was no follow up and it wasn't addressed as far as that person's behavior.
Right.
And so, as a leader, the leader needs to be accountable and hold that person accountable. If the behaviors are causing dysfunction in the organization, address it with that person, either by coaching the person, feedback, performance improvement, some way, and document what needs to be done. Because it was tragic that that behavior had been allowed to exist for so many years and so many people just avoided that person because they didn't want to deal with her. And that is not a highly functioning team when that's allowed. And so some leaders say, well, I don't know what to do. Find out what you do. Go to your HR person, go to your manager, get an assessment, get outside coaching, find out what needs to be done because it will drain the department of the work and things will escalate to the point where these two employees were not speaking to each other for a long time.
Isn't that crazy? That is such a culture killer.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, think about the time, energy, and resources, one, that were wasted before you ever came in, and two, that were spent in mediation. And then, after the mediation is over, I love that you leave with agreements and all that. But man, those two people need support. And if they weren't getting it before, I guess I just have a question mark in my mind. We also have to empower and support the leader, the manager there to keep the work moving forward. And I feel like that's a really tough spot. I think a lot of managers know that this is important to do, but they don't know how.
Right. Absolutely, Claire. They don't know the how. And having a conversation with both of the employees, and these employees had different managers, engaging the manager, having the manager check in with their employee. How are things going? What's going on? What is the communication like between you and this other person? How can I help?
Yes.
What do you need? And then the manager of the other individual doing the same thing. What's the communication like? Are there anything that's stopping the working together? And is there any, coaching that you need? Is there any classes that you need? Any skills that you want to develop? So that this doesn't continue on. Also, the organizations at large sees what's happening, Claire. They see what has happened over the years. And they could take that the leadership can take this as an opportunity to work with these two individuals individually and then together and think of what that would do to the organization. Oh, we had a long-term issue here, but the management is doing something about it now.
Mm-hmm.
That for productivity and people wanting to come to work and work environment where there's at least a way to address issues or how people get along.
Right. I think about how powerful and meaningful it is when the leader actually sets up standards and expectations for the team, right?
Right.
And those should be developed not just in a vacuum, but essentially bringing the team together and saying, early on, like this manager, this person who had been there for 2 years, like right at the beginning, like let's go in there and let's talk about what those standards and expectations are going to be so that when things start to go off the rails, you have a clear expectation that has been established in advance and you can actually refer to that and talk it through as a performance issue early on. Like, okay, this needs to change. We're not going to just let this, fester under the surface for years and set a standard. In a sense, that's now setting the standard. Oh, our bar is very, very low. Like it's perfectly fine for us to not speak to each other in this workplace. Like that's just hard all the way around.
And one of the things I also, to your point, encourage the manager, this should be a topic on your monthly meeting every month.
Yes.
What are we doing to support each other? How are we supporting each other? And making sure that professionalism is there. I said, it's great that you have operating principles on the outside of your door, but if they're not being followed or looked at, it means nothing.
It means it's hip. Everybody looks at it and goes like, ignore that. That doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's like having values on the wall with all the pretty posters and like, but we don't follow, we don't do these things. And I just feel like that's such important work. Okay. So I'm fascinated by this and I could ask you about 100 situations, but I want you to share some of your personal wisdom, Theresa. You've had a wonderful, rich career doing lots of amazing things. Everything from, like we talked about, coaching, teaching people how to coach, performance management, these mediations, investigations, and you are an executive coach as well. So I want to know a little bit about like what kind of patterns you see in people, yourself and others, who are willing and able to transform their suffering and their setbacks into success. So many people just tend to give up or get stuck. What do you see? What's under the surface there? What are the core beliefs and habits that we should all be cultivating that can help all of us be more resilient in the face of adversity? When those tough moments come, what are the beliefs that help you have that aim frame, that forward momentum, that deep respect for yourself that says, I'm going to work on being part of the solution? What's happening there, Theresa? Do you have any insight on that you could share?
I think it's a few things. It's resiliency and being resilient. No situation is perfect. And so in my early career, when I stumble or I see a leader who's trying, it's that it starts with me first. I can't be impactful as far as change or work with someone if I don't continue to look at myself first and say, what do I need to do?
Mhm.
Am I meeting this person without any preconceived ideas? Let me do the best that I can.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story. Listen and seek to understand.
Yeah.
I think those are some of the things that really, really, resonated with me as I started with my career. And I made mistakes. And when I made mistakes, I thought, oh my gosh, I'll never get this. This is not for me. And I said, no, you know what? Just get up and keep moving. And that's one of the things that I did. I always want to be authentic. What you see is what you get. This is me being authentic, being approachable.
Yeah.
Again, that's seeking to understand. Also, I like to look at constant improvement for myself. How can I improve? How can I get better? What did I learn?
Yeah.
Involving others in that learning,
Yeah.
letting others know. Because I've been approached many times to be a mentor and I've mentored. And I've said, don't be afraid to take that step.
Right.
If you're afraid, lean into the fear. Just lean into it because you're not the only one who's been in this situation, and you'll be stronger when you get out of it.
Yes.
And people don't know maybe how fearful you are, because you come as prepared as you can and you just move through it. And with each time it gets a little easier, you'll say, "Oh, I'll tweak this. Oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should have done this." And then over time, you get to a space where you're settled and it feels good. And I think that's what I've learned with investigations for over hundreds of investigations. Even when the investigation didn't turn out the way maybe the complaining party who brought the allegation, it maybe didn't turn out the way they were expecting.
Right.
And when I'd gone back to give the outcome and the findings and it wasn't substantiated, more times than not, they say, "Okay, Teresa, I know you were fair and you listened. And so it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to." When I first would have to give news that their allegation wasn't substantiated, I'd be nervous. I'd be like, "Oh, what are they going to say? What are they going to do?" But Teresa, this is what happened. Just tell them. I heard everything you said. I looked at the policy. I did interviews, but it didn't meet the standard of an allegation. But you were heard. And so they thanked me for it, even though they didn't get the outcome that they wanted. And so from there, Claire, I learned be fair, be consistent, make sure people feel that they're heard, give them enough time to be heard, and do your job, do what you need to do. And so that has helped me over the years.
Absolutely. I mean, what you've just described is such a foundational growth mindset. And I think combined with just being kind to yourself and having the confidence that you're in the right place, that you can grow and learn from every situation. And it's so empowering, really, if nothing else, to not go ahead and beat yourself up over the things that don't go well. We all have those all the time,
Yes.
all the time.
I think another thing I did early on in my career, I sought mentors. I sought people that I really respected, and they were also very respected. And I sought them out as a mentor. And luckily, they agreed to mentor me. And I realized, and they shared with me that they didn't have it all together either in the beginning. They had to learn. And I thought, oh, well, if you have to learn, certainly I need to learn. And they said, yes. But the learning is where you grow and develop. You know, that's where it is. That's the key, and remain authentic. And that's the thing that I really saw from these leaders and the mentors that I had. They were really authentic and they just called it as it was. They were very respected, but they didn't come born into the world like that. I believe that, and I've heard this phrase and I believe it. Leaders are not born, they're made.
Let me add to that and say, somebody say, well, they're all born, but we can all learn to be leaders, right? We can all learn these things if we're willing to be open hearted and have that humility that we need. We need to be able to carry some humility with us so that we can learn and grow.
Yes, yes. And ask your team. One of the things I've done in the past, especially with new leaders that are very nervous, and they say, Teresa, my team is thinking I need to have all the answers, and I don't have all the answers. And I said, that's okay.
Right.
Let them know, yes, you are the leader, but I need you. I need your ideas. I need your focus. Can you help me to get us to this place? And when new leaders have done that, they've come back to me and coaches and said, Teresa, it worked. And I said, yes, they have ideas too. And so asking them for help, letting them know you need their help and you're embracing their ideas, they come forward. And that's one of the things new leaders often struggle with. And when we turn it around and I ask the leader to be inclusive of their team and getting their ideas, do a brainstorming session, it has really paid off.
Awesome. Well, Theresa, you just mentioned just the importance of authenticity, and we probably need to wrap this up. There's so many ways we could take this, but I just want to say that you are truly such a gift to me and one of the most authentic and open-hearted people I've had the joy and pleasure of working with and meeting and intersecting our lives and our careers. So thank you so much for all the amazing work you've done. You have made a tremendously positive impact on this world, and I'm just so lucky I got to be part of it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And I just want to say to you, Claire, thank you for everything that you've done and taught me and others about leadership and other things. Claire, you are absolutely a genuine, authentic person and an absolute joy to work with.
Thank you, Theresa. Okay, we'll see you soon and happy retirement.
Thank you.
Wow, what a great conversation. First and foremost, I want to hear your stories. I'm guessing that listening to this episode maybe sparked some memories for you. What situations have you faced or are even happening for you now? Which ones are the biggest struggle for you? I want to catch those and help you transform those before they turn into really serious issues and result in wasted days or months or even years. So you can always connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm at Claire Laughlin Consulting, and I always love to hear from you. So connect with me that way and share with me some of your stories. Send me a DM. Let me know what's happening for you. And there's so many lessons in this episode. I just want to highlight a few. Theresa truly sees the good in every person and situation, and she has a real gift for helping people feel safe and heard and respected, no matter how deep the dysfunction in the relationship that she's trying to mediate. She has a gift. I was just struck by how she described the power of simply listening and understanding people with very different perspectives, and how that alone sparks the healing process. We need to think about this as leaders. We need to suspend our judgment and remember that everyone has good reasons for acting as they do. I did a whole episode on that, so go check that out, and it's a great complement to this episode. That t-shirt incident really struck me. Really, in a perfect world, those folks would have just spoken directly to each other about the issue, and it would have been resolved, and that would have been the end of it. But we all know that there are a multitude of those sort of t-shirt incidents going on every day. So remember this, as leaders, we need to fully commit to sharpening our internal radars for this kind of dysfunction. If you notice two people who don't speak to each other, or you hear rumors, or you feel rising tension on your team, it is time to intervene. These, my friends, are the signs of diminishing trust. And I promise you, the faster you catch it and reset it, the easier it will be. Many of us struggle with trust issues because we don't know what to do when we see relationships disintegrating or when tension rises, and we just can't put a finger on why. And that's why we all have to learn about the dynamics of trust and be really committed trust builders. And if you don't know where to start, you're not alone. I created this online course called Building a High Trust Workplace to address exactly that. And you can find it on my website at clairelaughlin.com/high-trust-workplace. Or just go to clairelaughlin.com and look under the courses tab. This course is designed to help you understand the dynamics of trust and personally take positive action to start untangling and rebuilding trust immediately. It was designed to address exactly these kind of intractable issues. And as a leader, you need these skills. So check it out today on my website at clairelaughlin.com/high-trust-workplace. I'll link to that in the show notes. Or as I said, of course, I want you to reach out to me. If you'd like to talk through your challenge, I'm here for you. Send me an email at support@clairelaughlin.com because I'm here for you and I want to help you build that happy and highly productive workplace. As always, thanks so much for being here and listening. Now go lead the way. I hope you've enjoyed this episode.
To learn more about my services and for lots of free resources and additional tools to enrich your journey, visit my website and subscribe to my newsletter at clairelaughlin.com. If you have a question about leadership, teams, or organizational culture you'd like me to address on the podcast, please reach out to me at support@clairelaughlin.com and connect with me on social channels at Claire Laughlin Consulting. Until next time, lead the way.